Yo, what's going on? It's your main man, Rick the Dawn. And if you're here to, talk, recap, discuss episode 3 of Survivor, you could not be in a better place because that is exactly what we are about to do. This episode is brought to you by VidMondo. That is my video sharing platform. It is, yeah, that's my little invention, and yeah, a lot of work to try to get that to prominence. But nevertheless, that's who this episode is brought by. Thank you all in advance for liking this episode, as it does help a small channel. And as you can tell, it's just a very small channel. Getting a lot of emails from people from overseas, international locations, like, "Hey, your channel is great, but you don't have any views. Can I help you?" I'm like, "Nah, just let me be a small channel in peace. I'll just be the little engine that could." All right, anyway, this episode starts off with Cody having some discussions about having attained his full idol. As you know, he was not able to really activate his idol unless he got a bead from every player in the game. So once Justine leaves, his idol is fully activated. So we do see that Cody is very, very excited about that. I am one who thinks that Cody is somewhat of a villain. All right, a little bit of a villain. I do see the good qualities in Cody, but for me, most overall, he is a villain. So a villain with the idol. Let's see how that plays out. The only player that seems to know about Cody's idol is Jesse. Okay, Jesse is most people who watched Jesse play, they pretty much came to the same consensus that I came to, which is Jesse is a strategic player. He's a player that you have to watch. You have to keep your eye out for. But in this episode, Jesse is okay with going against Dwight. Apparently, Jesse blindsided Dwight and company when he voted to evict Justine. It is my understanding that Dwight did not have a vote last tribal council. So the way that Jesse saw it was, hey, it's my vote. I'm not playing your game. I'm going to play my own game. However, that move caused a lot of friction, especially between Dwight and Jesse, and that caused Dwight to have second thoughts or guesses or opinions or what have you when it comes to Jesse. He just didn't quite trust him as he normally would. I have my own feelings about this whole Survivor marriage thing that Jesse and Dwight have. You heard, what's up? My main man Tim is in the building. What's up, T? I got this weird, thank you for the like, T. I appreciate you, bro. I got this weird feeling about how Dwight and Jesse carry on with this whole wife-husband thing. It's really strange to me. But as you know, this entire episode 3 is called "I'll Sign the Divorce Papers." So apparently Survivor is actually buying into this whole concept between Dwight and Jesse. But that move that Jesse pulls off last tribal council causes Dwight to say, hey, I'm not completely out of love with Jesse. But Dwight does admit that causes Dwight to say, hey, I'm not completely out of love with Jesse. But Dwight does admit that he is certainly more skeptical than he was before. While on the other side of the spectrum, Jesse is completely all for a divorce. He'll sign the papers and all these different things. So we did hear that from Jesse and Dwight. Okay. But anyway, Jesse does point out something that's very interesting. He points out that he wants to move forward with Neca and Cody. That was very surprising to hear for me. But if we know, or I should say, if you saw the conclusion of tonight's episode, then you see how that doesn't quite pan out. I think when Jesse says that, he doesn't think that they're going to go to tribal council. Okay, so that's what happens with that. But anyway, Dwight is catching on to Jesse's strategic power. This episode shows us Dwight finally starting to put the pieces together and realizing that, this guy Jesse is actually pretty strategic. Okay, that move that he pulled off was not a novice move. That was a very high-level veteran move. So I think he starts to figure it out. Okay, then we transferred to Gabler, who is sleeping on the beach. He's getting fed up. He's getting ate up. He's getting, definitely drained from the competition. And I think Gabler, by his own admission, would say that he didn't really think the game would be this taxing on the body. He's over 50 years old, and you certainly see that it's starting to take a huge toll on Gabler. Okay, but anyway, Ellie wants Gabler gone next, wants his idol out of play. So Ellie, I've already said this before, is one of the most devious players I've seen this season. I think she certainly is the female version of a villain if Cody is the male version. And she points out that she wants Gabler out of the game so that she can, for the most part, remove his idol out of contention. And the poor man is on a beach, just laid out, and it looks like he's about to pass out. And the first thing that Ellie can possibly think of is removing his idol, getting Gabler out the game. I mean, there you have it, folks. You got a guy over 50 on the beach, exhausted, and Ellie wants to eliminate him. I think that tells you who she is. All right, but anyway, Sammy shows frustration with Ellie. Now, you know that my two picks to win are Owen and Sammy. I think they still look very strong in the game. I will not be changing my pick. I do think between Sammy and Owen, one of those two players will be in the finals. I have no doubt about it. Those two guys are playing very strong games. One thing I did notice about Sammy tonight is he grows very frustrated with Ellie because he realizes that Ellie thinks she's running the game. Once Sammy sees Ellie having conversations with Gabler, having just talked about eliminating him, he gets very, very frustrated. And he comes up with this plot to sabotage Ellie's game. And if you know anything about what's happening right now, Ellie has a ride or die right now. Her name is Janine. Janine is very sneaky. She went through the bag of Gabler to, take a look at his idol and what his idol contained or what the power it contained. And Sammy, for all intents and purposes, put Janine up to that task to go through the bag of Gabler. And that did not sit well with Sammy because he sees that Ellie feels all powerful and he doesn't like it. So Sammy does something that I would argue could be conceived or perceived as a little snakish. He goes to Gabler and he tells Gabler exactly what Ellie and Janine pulled off. But in a very surprising twist, he, for the most part, emphasizes the name of Ellie. Even though it was Janine who went through the bag, he doesn't really talk about Janine. He tells Gabler that Ellie went through the bag, and that causes Gabler to be more upset with Ellie than he is with Janine, who actually committed the act. I guess Gabler and Sammy's rationale, and for the most part placing the blame on Ellie, was the fact that Ellie was the mastermind behind the decision, and Janine, for the most part, was just the person who acted it out. So how do you feel about Sammy revealing that information to Gabler? Which, if I might be honest with you, once that information is brought to Gabler's attention, he is visibly upset. He's very angered by the fact that someone would go through his bags. I said going through his belongings would certainly not sit well. And I was right because immediately after Sammy brings that information to Gabler, Gabler, for the most part, said that Ellie had to go. She had to go. And I think for my two picks, that being Sammy and Owen, because if that is the case, then Ellie's going to go. And then I believe that Janine may go next. Janine is playing a good game on the account that she has a huge shield, and that shield is Ellie. Sammy tells Owen about Gabler's theft. Owen playing the middle. So at some point, Sammy goes to Owen, who is somewhere in the when they finally go up to Owen, he's like himself somewhere in the wilderness playing with the sand and dirt. And I said I could not be more happy with the way that Owen is playing the game because he's not in the mix. He's not trying to create alliances. He's not trying to battle against Ellie and Janine. He's not trying to side with Sammy and Gabler. Owen is off by himself, out of sight and out of mind. And because of that style of gameplay, I think he's going to do very well. He's playing the middle. So when the crossfire happens at the Baka tribe, I believe that Owen will pretty much be the swing vote. Gabler uses reverse psychology on Ellie regarding Ellie's little strategy. So at some point, the other members outside of Gabler and Owen, of course, that being Ellie, Janine, and I want to say Sammy, they all have this conversation about tricking Gabler, saying, hey, let's tell Gabler that his immunity idol is extinct. It doesn't have any more power. And Janine says, hey, so who should tell Gabler this information? And to our surprise, and I'm sure Sammy felt the same way, Ellie says, hey, I'll do it. And Sammy says, wait a minute, I also have a relationship with Gabler. But then Janine says, which I thought was a bad gameplay move, Janine says, well, no, Ellie is closer to Gabler. And that is what really causes that's what really causes Sammy to react the way he does, to say, wait a minute, so Ellie thinks she has a final two type of relationship with Gabler? Wait a minute. So wait, she thinks she's running the game. And that is what causes Sammy to go and tell Gabler, exactly what's going on. Now, because Sammy does that, he warns Gabler that Ellie's on her way to him to let him know that his idol has no power. And Gabler's reaction is priceless. He's like, look, I know I'm old. I know, I might come across as a hillbilly, but I'm not stupid. So, like the guy even talks about his career. I think he works in the medical field, and he does very complex surgeries. So the way he looks doesn't necessarily fit his career, what he does on a daily basis. So when Ellie comes by, she's like trying to trick Gabler into thinking that his idol is absolutely useless. And of course, Gabler, in my opinion, a very great move on his behalf. He plays along with Ellie's little strategy and says, hey, well, you know what? It is extinct. It doesn't work anymore. So Ellie goes on with the understanding that she has now confused or tricked Gabler, that his idol is no longer viable, which is absolutely false. When they go back to tribal council, Gabler's idol still works. But that is something that Ellie doesn't know that he knows. So that was kind of cool. Then they go over to the Coco tribe, and it's hilarious because they have Ryan, they have James, they have a very, very strong tribe. They have Lindsay, who I think is one of the stronger females in the game, and Coco is living La Vida Loca, okay? Everybody's happy. They're like kumbaya. They have lost 0 members, and by far, they are the strongest tribe in the game. And yeah, I mean, can you really blame them? Anybody who has Ryan on their team is going to be a very strong team, okay, because Ryan is a freak of nature. But anyway, James admits to going to look for an idol. So at one point in the camp, because Coco is living so well, nobody's really scrambling, nobody's feeling like they're in any kind of trouble. And James makes a really strange move, in my opinion. I think it's a bad move. He tells the other members of his tribe that he would at some point go and look for an idol. I thought that was a bad move because, for one, you didn't have to tell anyone you were going to do that. And number two, by voicing that, though you're being honest, you're making them start to question your motives and what you're going to do. So James does that, and it was a bad move in my opinion, because immediately after he says it, I believe her name is Lindsay. Lindsay, who I think is the strongest female player in the game, says, hey, if you do that, you know what the consequences are. You know what comes with that type of decision. And, you could argue that even Lindsay saying that was the wrong move as well, because let's face it, even though Lindsay might not be open about it, she's also thinking about the idols and other things that are a part of the game. So, James is not wrong in wanting to look for the idol, but perhaps he should have kept that to himself. Later on, Carla schemes and looks for the idol, and guess what? She finds it. So Carla is, Lindsay, I would say again, Lindsay is the strongest player. She just comes across as very authoritarian. However, Carla is the best female player in the game. Let's not mix strength with overall quality. I think Carla by far is the best female player in the game. So she goes out and she's looking for the idol, and it's right above her head. And for a moment, I thought that maybe she would miss it, but it turns out she does look up and she sees the hidden immunity idol. But this season has this really weird twist where there is a penalty that comes with activating the idol. Some people may like it, some people may not. I'm one of the people who are that is still on the fence. I'm not quite sure how I like this new spin on the season. But then again, it's okay with me on the account that the immunity idols, they kind of water the game down a little bit. I feel like they give too much power in some cases. So the fact that the players have to activate the idols does make it more interesting. So Carla finds this beware idol, and she doesn't take it initially. She actually places it back on the tree branch, and she goes off. And that's when the commercial break happens. So you think that she's going to pretty much, just leave it there. You don't really know for sure. But then you come back and you see that Carla is having a conversation with James, the same guy who says at some point during the day he's going to go look for an idol. You see that Carla and James are having this discussion. And what Carla is doing is trying to probe James, tactics. So she asks James, hey, James, if you found the idol, what would you do with it? And James is kind of like, he's kind of just talking like he's half asleep. Like I didn't hear any concrete strategy about what James would do with the idol. And as such, Carla starts to have an epiphany. She says to herself, wait a minute, why am I not taking a chance? My entire existence or my entire reason for being on the game of Survivor is to take risks. So at some point, Carla goes back to that same tree and finds the immunity idol, at which she decides to open it up, and she realizes that she has to get the bead. There's a bead on the back of every player's backpack that she has to commandeer in order to actually activate the idol. So, like I said, I, you look, I don't know how I feel about the whole idol thing. I've been watching Survivor since the first season when there were no advantages of this stature. So I am still trying to come around to the whole idol thing. I know that a lot of people like the whole idol concept. I'm not one of them necessarily. But if you're going to have idols in a game, at least they're making it more challenging to activate them and utilize them. And Carla actually comes to the conclusion that she will take on this challenge and she will have to commandeer the bead from every contestant. And this is where things get very interesting because she goes to certain players to actually gain their little bead. And the way that she does it is she says, hey, I want to create a gift for my girlfriend. Or no, actually she says, my wife at home. Can I use your bead? I'll trade you for something. And when she says it, when she kind of gives out her whole spiel, I'm thinking to myself, this is a terrible idea. I mean, you're on a game of Survivor and you're like talking about a bead and you want a bead to create a necklace. Okay, let me think about that. So if I'm on the game and Carla comes to me and asks that question, I'm saying absolutely not, because you're trying to make a necklace, which I could say, hey, that could be a immunity necklace, anything of that caliber. And why do you need something right now? Why are you bothering me when we have an entire area full of beads and pebbles and rocks? Why do you need my bead specifically? But no one seems to ask that question. Okay, so that was very surprising for me. But anyway, to switch gears just a tad bit, Neca talks about her inspiration for playing the game. This was our first time learning what Neca's past was about, what her inspiration for playing the game was. And it turns out she's somewhat of a missionary. She's a player who, for the most part, takes people in. It appears that she was mostly there because she was there for the support of some people who defected from Islam to Christianity. If I'm not mistaken, that was the people who she was fighting for or playing the game for. Apparently, those people who defected from Islam, they were, attacked. Their area, their home was burned down. As such, those Christian individuals were left without for a moment of time. But then she also notes that those same Christian individuals who lost their home by way of fire, they were not complaining. They were just happy no one had lost their life. And that brings Neca to the realization that maybe she's, a little bratty. Maybe she's overthinking some things. She even talks about it being first world problems. Like, hey, I'm worried about not eating. I'm worried about, having sand on my feet. But then you have people who've lost their home by way of some threatening cause. So maybe I shouldn't be complaining so much as what Neca says. And I thought that was a good way to look at that situation. But anyway, one thing that I was a little surprised about, Carla was able to gather everyone's beads. And I would say that she struggled most to gain the bead from Ryan. And I did not see that as being possible. Ryan seems to be a player that is more of a brute. I know that it's a stereotype, but just based on his physique, based on how he plays the game, I didn't see him being the hardest bead to gather. But apparently Ryan also wanted to keep his beads. But then Carla comes up with a very clever way to get the bead from Ryan, and that is using Ryan's girlfriend, saying, hey, you can give this to your girlfriend and so forth if you give me the bead. And Ryan accepts the offer with open arms. So that was very interesting. Let's see here. All right, then we transition to the immunity challenge. And again, I will point out that there is one big difference from this season to others. I didn't necessarily think this was going to be the case, but I'm not seeing award challenges first. All right, it seems like they're mixing the immunity challenges and the award challenges at a higher frequency than they normally do. Usually, at least the way I remember the game, they would do a award challenge and then that would be followed up by a immunity challenge. But it seems like this season, more than in many of the seasons I've watched, they're combining those two games into one. So we get a really cool immunity challenge, and it is a swim slash puzzle mixture. And the reward is a toolbox and fruit. Okay, and I have to tell you, this is one of my favorite parts about the game of Survivor. Watching people, just glow up when they see food for the first time. Any food outside of rice. And that also brings me to a point. I haven't seen much rice this season, so it makes me wonder, what are they eating? I think it was Vessi that lost their flint. So it's like, what are they eating? I don't see fire. Perhaps the editing is not focusing on food necessarily, but I will have to say that is a noticeable thing that I'm seeing. I'm not seeing much food at all. I haven't seen much rice. So of course, when Jeff reveals the immunity reward, which is again tools and fruit, you can clearly see that these players want to win this. And the first place reward is much bigger than the second place reward. So right now, because we're still early in the game, there are two types of rewards, that being the big reward and the smaller reward. Whereas third place gets no reward, I believe loses their flint and has to vote someone out of the game. So that's what happens. Gio, which is a player from the Coco tribe, the overpowered Coco tribe, decides to sit out, and he does something that I was happy to see. Gio looks underneath the bench and he finds that there is no advantages, but it was great to see him look there, because at least the last two seasons, if I remember correctly, Jeff has hid a advantage underneath the bench. So finally, someone looks under the bench and Gio doesn't find anything at all. Okay, but anyway, Noelle does finally compete in the competition. Maybe she's done so before, but this was the first time that I saw Noelle in a competition, and she does remove her leg, the prosthetic limb. And I said, I want to see how she does. I want to see what happens here. And to my surprise, Noelle does very well. She does very well. She swims very well. She was able to bring herself up onto the wooden shore, whatever it is, I forget what it's called, but she's able to bring herself out of the water. Okay, and for all intents and purposes, she does pretty well, and I was happy to see that. And I also wanted to point out that this is one thing I do like about Survivor, is that they give everyone a chance to play. People that are strategic, people who are not so good at the game or not so athletic, or they give everyone a chance. Old people, young people. And I just thought that was good to see. Not only Noelle get the chance to play, but Noelle do a pretty sufficient job at the game. But I did notice one thing that stood out very much so to me, and it was what's going on, Sergio? Sergio is in the building. Sergio, if you got anything to point out, just go ahead and jump in. I'll read your comment. That's for anybody watching this live. When you go into the comments, just go ahead and jump in. I'll read your comment. That's for anybody watching this live. When you go into the comment section, I will read. Which I have to point out that Ryan does an amazing job. I mean, this guy is the quintessential Survivor. All right, he's going to get voted out, unfortunately, because he's such a physical threat. Once you get to the merge and he wrecks every competition, the one that he doesn't win, he's out of there. Okay, there's no question whether or not Ryan will go far. The answer is no. There's no way he's going to win, and there's no way he's going to go far, because he's so agile. He's so strong. And dare I say, he's very intelligent in the way that he plays the game. I saw this guy hop in the water. He didn't even come up for air, for crying out loud. And he grabs his piece, comes up, grabs the piece, throws it up. I mean, this guy's doing multiple acts in one motion. And right then and there, I realized that Ryan is not going to win this game, though he will certainly be someone who may win like the favorite player of the season type of deal, but he's not going to win the big prize because he's going to get voted out. And who can blame him? Who can blame him? But anyway, the competition, at least from the beginning, it comes down to Vessi and Baca. And if you don't know, that is the yellow tribe and the red tribe. And the people that Vessi puts up to solve the puzzle is Neca and Jesse. And I'm thinking to myself, listen, it's between Baca and Vessi. All right, this should go pretty well for Vessi. Okay, they got Neca there. They got Jesse, who's a mastermind. And Neca, from my point, needs to be pretty intelligent. So there's no reason why she can't, do well with Jesse. But it turns out that Baca, for the second time, in 2 weeks. They win first place. And I have to say, shout out to Baca. I mean, what that proves to me is that they made the right decision. Though I think Ellie is a snake, they made the right decision in voting out Mariah. Okay. When they voted out Mariah, I had my personal, opinions about it. I didn't want to see her leave that early. But the fact of the matter is, since she's been gone, they've won first place twice. So I have to park my own biases and realize that they made the right decision because they end up winning first place for the biases and realize that they made the right decision because they end up winning first place for this competition. So shout out to Baca for winning first place again. But then the competition boils down to Bessie and Coco. And Coco is trailing behind for some reason. I can't understand why, because Ryan wrecks the course and it seems like everyone else does pretty well. But it turns out that between Bessie and Coco, and what happens is Coco looks at Baca's puzzle to see how it is assembled, and it turns out that is the swinging move to change the momentum of the game. And as such, Neca starts to look over and try to figure out, hey, what did Baca do? But it's too little too late, and it turns out that Coco moves just fast enough to win second place and put Bessie in third place. And of course, this is not a good look for Bessie. I believe this is their second week in a row going to tribal council, their second week in a row in third place. And even more so, I think Neca and Justine were the two people who lost the challenge the last time. So this marks the second time that Neca doesn't perform well in a competition. And certainly the players on her tribe are starting to take notice. So it was not good. Okay. But anyway, after the competition is over, there's a vote. Jeff announces that, hey, I want one person from each tribe to go on this little adventure. By now, the viewers understand what this whole journey is about. You're risking your vote for a secret advantage. And the players that end up going were James, Noelle, and Owen. Okay, they go on this special trip. Now, I want to point out that Owen is such a stud in this game. He is my favorite to win the game. He does go on the trip, and I feel like Owen is very, very crafty in how he selects to do certain things. Again, Baca won first place. You have to think that Owen was a pivotal part of that first place win. And there's no threat whatsoever on the table for Owen, and he chooses to go on this special trip, and I thought it was a perfect time to do so. I also think that James is playing a really stellar game. James also goes on the trip. Noelle going was very questionable on the account that her tribe just lost, and, she has one leg, and, these are things that people could try to use against her and saying, hey, she's gone. She has an advantage. She didn't do so well in the challenge, whatever. But here's what happens for Noelle. She does do well in the challenge, and that was the deciding factor. In fact, she did so well that it made Neca's performance stand out even worse. Now, you could also make the argument that Jessie did not do well, but this was one of Jessie's first poor performances, where this was a constant bad performance by Neca, and it really stacked the cards against her, even though Noelle is quote-unquote handicapped, even though Noelle is going on a trip to possibly win an advantage. It just doesn't matter when you compare those factors to the fact that Neca has, for the second week in a row, caused the tribe to lose. So the question becomes, who is more of a disadvantage? The fact that Noelle may be winning a prize of some sort that can change the game, or the fact that Neca just can't win anything, okay? And I'm talking about anything. But Jessie seems to struggle with the idea and the concept of voting Neca out because, according to Jessie, Neca reminds him of his mother, who's also or was also a missionary and did things to help the youth and the homeless and stuff like that. So he definitely struggles with the concept and idea of voting Neca out of the game. But after the competition is over, Neca admits to a poor performance, which is a bad strategy. Of course, you always want to deflect. I think that Jessie did that very well. In fact, I saw conversations that Jessie had with other tribe mates, and at not one point did he point out that he didn't do so well. In fact, he, placed all the blame on Neca, which was smart in my opinion. But Neca admits to doing that. She even breaks down because she realizes, maybe to her own fault, that hey, she might have to put out Noelle. And, what it did was, on a subconscious level, it created sympathy for Noelle. All right. It wasn't like when Ellie went after Mariah. When Ellie went after Mariah, it was like Mariah is bad for the team. She's garbage. She sucks. She's trash. That's it. Okay. However, in this situation, Neca kind of breaks down because she thinks that Noelle will be the first or the next person to go. And by way of her breaking down, even as a viewer, I start to feel bad for Noelle. So maybe you can say that Neca played with her heart, and perhaps is not a good player for the game of Survivor, where you have to be cutthroat. It's called Survivor, which means that you have to survive. You have to outwit, outplay, out-strategize. You have to backstab. This is the game. This game is even more cutthroat than the game of Big Brother. Okay, you're in a house with people. You're comfortable, but when you talk about Survivor, you're out in the wilderness, and you have to do whatever you can to make sure that your time in that wilderness is worth, that time in the wilderness. I mean, you don't want to spend that time out there and you're not eating what you want to eat and then go home. So you're really trying to survive. And at that point, I saw that Neca has a heart. And though it is great outside of the game of Survivor, not necessarily on the inside of the game. But anyway, Cody says Noelle has shed any doubt. So one thing that Cody did point out is that he has some doubts about Noelle's performance, given the fact that she has a handicap. All right, but he says that she shreds any doubt of her performance or ability, given that she did so well in the competition. She jumped in the water. She wasn't afraid to jump. She swam very well. She was able to pull herself up. She did lean on Cody at the beginning of the competition. I mean, but that could have just been looked at as, hey, camaraderie. So in a lot of ways, she just certainly shred all types of doubt as it related to her performance in the game. And I had to agree with Cody there. Okay. So that happens. So eventually, Noelle fears being away from the tribe could hurt her game. I mean, obviously, her going on this little trip with James and Owen could certainly hurt her chances of surviving another week, because she's away from the tribe and she can't really defend herself against players like Neca, who might be throwing her name under the bus. But again, Neca doesn't really play that type of game. So that worked out in Noelle's benefit, because Neca wasn't gunning for Noelle, saying, hey, she didn't do this, she didn't do that, and she's on the trip right now. You don't think she should be considered to go out? No, Neca breaks down, she cries, she shows sympathy for Noelle, and these things, in my opinion, work against her. But once you see Noelle on this trip with James and Owen, you quickly realize that this is going to be a very difficult trip for her, because the three individuals have to navigate this forest area, which is very rocky. It's very rocky terrain. And you realize that, given that Noelle has to, navigate this terrain with a prosthetic limb, this is going to be very challenging. But again, it shows yet again how tough Noelle is. Okay, it shows how strong she is, and for the first time, we find out her history and where she comes from. You see the prosthetic limb, and you don't really know the backstory unless you've been really, diving into the cast dialogues and information online or what have you. But I didn't know that she was a 3-star athlete. I didn't know she was so talented. I didn't know she was so athletic. We're talking about someone, based on the clips I saw, based on the photos I saw, Noelle was a contender. Okay, she was someone, when she had both legs, probably could beat me in some sports. Okay, I forget the sport that she played. Don't quote me on this. I think it was like rugby or something to that effect. But she was very strong looking. Like, she looked very, very athletic. And I believe that it was a moped accident that caused the issue in which she had to get her leg amputated. So very, very sad story. But at the same time, her courage has certainly inspired even myself. I think Neca even points out the fact that she was inspired, and that was what mostly made her sad about the possibility of voting out Noelle. But yes, so that is what happens. It was a moped accident, and that is what caused it. And I think Noelle, because of that, because of her history before the accident, she realizes that she has a lot to prove, and that is why she's on the game of Survivor. It's also that chip on her shoulder that has not inspired me. I won't say that again. I'll say it has made me a believer. Okay, the same thing that Cody says about Noelle. Look, when I first saw Noelle, I thought the exact same thing as most people. Hey, how is she going to do this? How is this going to work? But she has a fire in her that I have to say is very intriguing. She's very, very fiery. And I thought that Noelle and Justine would have done very well had Jesse not voted out Justine last tribal. So that was interesting. But as Noelle, Owen, and James are walking towards whatever they're supposed to be walking towards, they're supposed to get to know each other. And at some point, they will be asked whether or not they want to risk or not risk their vote for a secret advantage. And to my surprise, Noelle comes right out to Owen and James and says, look, I need your help. I'm at the bottom, or she says she's at the bottom of her tribe, and she points out like, look, she needs to vote. And she says something that's very surprising to me, and I want to know how you feel about this. She tells James and Owen, if you two risk your vote, or I should say not risk your vote, and allow Noelle to win, then come the merge, she was willing to start a 3-person alliance. Now, I just thought to myself, the minute that Noelle makes this pitch, I say to myself, I love it, because that means that Owen will have some, another layer of protection for himself. So they ultimately decide to give the advantage to Noelle, which you can say is good or bad. I think it's great, because it definitely creates some kind of bond with players from the other sides of the tribe. And if there comes, or I should say, if they all make the alliance or the merge, then Owen, like I said, he'll have 2 members who he has some type of history with. And the fact that he already blessed Noelle with this type of advantage, that will certainly work in his favor. So again, I'm Team Owen, and I was very happy to see that Noelle made that pitch, and that both James and Owen conceded and gave her the win in order to get the advantage. So that happens. All right. When Noelle returns back to her tribe, we know how this goes. Everyone's very skeptical, and they're like, hey, so what happened? They're trying to figure out, did you get something? Did you not get something? And Noelle does something that I was really happy to see. She comes across as very innocent, very competitive, but innocent. But she does something that was strategically smart, in my opinion. And she lies to everyone. She says, look, nothing happened. You can check my bag. You can go through everything. And it turns out she wasn't so afraid of being checked, like her bag or her body or what have you, because her prosthetic limb has a secret compartment that she was able to hide her advantage in. So she does that, and they seem to just buy it. They didn't call her bluff, which I would have, okay, because I'm that kind of guy. I would have said, hey, you say you don't mind us checking, so can I? That's me. That's why I wouldn't make it far in these games, because I would ask if I could, hey, I don't want to check your bra or nothing like that, okay? But your bag, can I check your bag, please? And then hey, what about that little compartment down there? Do you mind if I check that? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's me, and that's why I wouldn't make it so far in these games. But Noelle certainly uses that strategy, and no one seems to pick up on it, and they let her go about her business. All right, but she did do one thing. I want to know how other people feel about it. Do you think it was a bad or good strategy? She does tell Dwight about her steal a vote advantage. So apparently she has an advantage where at tribal council, she can steal one person's vote. And Noelle considers stealing Jesse's vote because, as we know, Dwight doesn't have a vote. And last tribal council, it was Jesse who voted and blindsided everyone in his removal of Justine. If you know anything, you know that Justine and Noelle were very tight. They were very close. And I think a very strong force moving forward had Jesse not made that move. But because Noelle is skeptical, or I should say because Jesse made that move, Noelle is skeptical, and she confides in Dwight and says, look, I do have a steal a vote advantage, and apparently she considers using that steal a vote advantage against Jesse. So we are very, on our tippy toes, biting our fingernails. Like, is she going to use it tonight? Is she going to use it against Jesse? Look, can we have a conversation? Why do people on Survivor not use their advantages? I get it. By using the advantage, you do put yourself in a situation where everyone's like, hey, you didn't tell us about this advantage, and now we don't trust you. So maybe that's the reason why. Maybe I answered my own question, but I have seen so many players go home with advantages that it makes me wonder, should players start to use their advantages more? So certainly when Noelle points out that she may be using or may consider using the advantage against Jesse, I get excited because I'm like, wait a minute, maybe we finally get someone that's going to use their advantage. Because I remember one year, I believe it was Survivor China, if I'm not mistaken, James, who was a huge physical specimen, had a boatload of awards and secrets and advantages. I believe he even had like 2 idols, and he goes home, and I've seen that type of gameplay happen far too much. All right. Sergio says, I don't watch Survivor. I want to watch it, but I have a question. Can production rig it in any way or give a player an advantage? I don't know anything of Survivor. So Sergio, great question. I don't necessarily think it would be considered rigging, but I do think it would be very, very likely for production to provide water off camera, provide snacks for anybody that looks like they're really, really struggling. But I would say the game of Survivor is rig free. Okay, if it was rigged, I wouldn't watch it. There's been a lot of talk about these games being rigged. I just don't see it as possible. Look, you're on a deserted island with a production cast. So yeah, there's going to be some conversations and things that happen off camera. But I do think the winners of the competitions, I do think the votes and things of that nature are 100% rig free. So great question. All right, if you say it's not like Big Brother, I'll take your word. No, it's not like Big Brother. And I know a lot of people are upset with Big Brother this season. They called it rigged. I'll be in the minority on this one. I don't think that Big Brother is rigged. I just don't think so at all. And the reason I think that is because at one point, a lot of players were saying the game was rigged for Michael. And they were especially saying that when Michael's name was picked to play in the veto. They said, hey, the game is rigged for Michael. We want to see all the chips in the bag. Don't just let her pick a bag and say Michael's name. Pour the remaining chips out of the bag so we can see that everyone had an equal chance of participating in the veto. But if I can point out the obvious, Michael doesn't win the game. So why rig the game for 1 week if you're not going to rig it in his favor to win the entire thing? Some people think that Taylor, the whole game was rigged for Taylor. I don't know if I agree with that either, because you got to think about it. Taylor went through quite a few things in the beginning of the game. She didn't ask for that. She didn't ask for Daniel to blame her for, Nicole's reaction and things of that, things of that nature. So no, I think what happens is when things don't go a certain way for some viewers, they look for excuses to justify what happened on the screen. I'm not one of those people. I pick my players at the beginning of a season, and whatever happens, happens. Okay, I know rigged. I was a huge fan of WWE for a great portion of my life. Okay, so I know what rigged looks like, and I saw rigged competitions on a weekly basis. Still enjoyed it, but I was easily able to tell what it felt like when $1 million company wants someone to win. Okay, I saw Stone Cold Steve Austin kick out of things he shouldn't have kicked out of. I saw The Rock get up from things he shouldn't have got out of. And that's what a rigged competition looks like. It feels fake. I would heavily say, or I will heavily point out that I am total disagreement that Big Brother or Survivor is rigged. I think it's competitive. I think that outside of what they show in the edited versions of the show, there are some things that happen. And we also have to point out that Big Brother has live feeds, right? So if Big Brother was rigged, they would not give people a inside look like that. Okay, you don't show live feeds for a rigged show. That's TV suicide. Like, you don't do that. If you have a script and things of that nature, you wouldn't do that. You can make the argument that for these shows with live feeds, you can certainly twist things up in the diary rooms. So maybe they should open up the diary room to show what conversations are happening in the diary room. I mean, that's a good argument, a counter argument. But again, I don't think so. I think that's going a little bit too far. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Is it possible, though? Of course. Of course it is. All right. Sharon says, did they vote Noelle out the Survivor game? My bad, Sharon. Let me get back to what I got off. I got a little off task. Thank you, Sergio, for that great question, though. Okay, here we go. So then they finally get to tribal council, and the tribal conversations are certainly strong enough to generate these facial expressions from Noelle. So Noelle's sitting there, and she has her 4 tribal mates, and they're all having these dialogues with Jeff. And Jeff already kind of knows what's going on. He's seen like 40 plus seasons of this game, 43 seasons. And he knows kind of what the tribe is doing, what they're thinking. And I'm sure, Sergio, that production tells Jeff, hey, so-and-so did this. Carla found the idol. Noelle did this. So I'm sure Jeff is always being briefed about what's happening in the game. So when he sits down at tribal council, I know that Jeff has an understanding that they may not know he has about what's going on. And Jeff is asking a lot of interesting questions, which is causing a visible reaction from Noelle. You can see her face kind of scrumpling up, and you can tell what Noelle is thinking. Should I be using my still a vote advantage tonight, or am I going to be safe enough to keep it to myself? Now, remember, the only player that knows about the steal a vote advantage is Dwight. But Noelle, you can just tell based on her visible reactions and how her face is, being manipulated and whatnot, you can tell that Noelle is starting to question whether or not she should be using the advantage, or should she just hold on to it? Because if she's able to get through tonight, she'll be able to go through the game with this major advantage. Okay, so that is the question that she's trying to decipher in her mind. Anyway, all members seem confident about the direction of the vote, and of course, Jeff does exactly what he's been doing for a long time, which is playing the bad guy, and he's asking everyone, "How confident are you that the vote will go your way?" And to my surprise, all players say a 9/10, if you can believe that. Neca said 9.5 out of 10. I do know that. I forget who said what numbers, but I know Neca said a 9.5 out of 10 in terms of how confident she was about where the vote was going to go. And you have to know this. Neca thought that Noelle was going home because that's what her tribe mates pitched her on. They said, "Hey, Neca, don't worry, it's going to be Noelle." So Neca felt that Noelle was going home 9.5% out of 10%. She's just very confident. And to my surprise, Jeff asks Noelle, "So what percentage are you about, where the vote is going?" And Noelle does the smart thing. She plays the very humble role and says, I think 5%. I'm about 5% sure where things are going to land out, which was the smart answer. You don't ever want to seem overconfident before the votes are cast. That was not a smart move on Neca's part, but I guess it really didn't matter. So anyway, everyone votes, and it turns out that Noelle chooses not to use her advantage. I don't know what to think about this whole thing. I get it. I understand it. In hindsight, it was the right move. But I just, if you're going to win these advantages, use them, because this is not like a game where you can battle yourself back into the game. Once you're gone, you're gone. It's just like life, okay? If life gave you an advantage, use it, because you never know. It can save you. So anyway, it turns out that Neca is the player that gets voted out. And that is great news for Noelle, because Noelle gets to go on to the next week. And she does not have to worry about, one, Neca, or two, the fact that she doesn't have her vote. She doesn't have to worry about that. She has her vote. And she has a still a vote advantage, which is going to definitely play a big role in the game. But if you're paying attention, you notice that Noelle has lost Justine, and now she's lost another piece of circumference, which is Neca. So she has no more wiggle room for any more Vesey losses. If Vesey loses again, it's without question that Noelle will probably be the player gone, unless the situation between Dwight and Jesse kind of implodes and they target each other. But I think that Noelle, for the most part, has played her last survival hand. She doesn't have Justine anymore. She doesn't have Neca anymore. So that could be a problem. Now, she does have Dwight in her corner, but the problem is Dwight doesn't have a vote. So it will really be Jesse's vote that could send her home. Now, here's the positive about it all. If Vesey goes back to tribal council and Jesse is the deciding vote, obviously Noelle could actually steal his vote and use that vote to cast whoever she wants to go home. So as I correct myself, as I often do, it seems like Noelle should be safe on the account that she can steal Jesse's vote and then use it against Jesse. So perhaps Jesse will be the person who is most in trouble next, because his vote could be stolen. So shout out to Noelle for not using it. I'm just saying I would have, because it wasn't really clear cut about who was going home. I'm going to use it against Neca just to make sure I'm safe. But yes, Neca is the first the next player from the Vesey tribe to go home. How do you feel about that? Do you think Nessie was the right person to go home? Do you think that Noelle is set up very nicely to win this game? Do you think she's a possible winner? Are you happy that she does not use her still a vote advantage? What do you feel about Noelle telling Dwight about the advantage? Who goes home next? Okay, I'm going to say that Vesey will go back to tribal council. I don't see Ryan and Coco having any problem. I don't see Baca. Well, Baca should have been lost, right? Baca is not better than Coco, in my opinion. So let me pump my brakes for a moment and say I would argue that Ellie goes home next, not Jesse. I'm going to say Ellie goes home next. Why? I believe that Baca is pulling the wool over the people's eyes. I don't have any clue how Baka is winning first place. Not just winning in the top two. They're winning first place. I don't have any idea how that's possible. Like on paper, the math just doesn't make sense to me. Okay, especially with a fully healthy Coco tribe with Ryan as a part of their Avengers assemblage. Like, how is Baka beating that? So I think that those wins are a bit of a fluke. And I do think that they'll be exposed the next episode. So I'm going to say Baka is going to go back to Tribal Council because I do think that Vesey has gotten stronger by way of getting rid of their anchor. As much as I like Neca and her cause and what she stands for, she just was not good at the game of Survivor. And it sucks because, I'm always rooting for the underdog and I'm hoping that they can pull it off. But she sucked, y'all. She sucked. Okay. So, but the question is, will the same thing happen for Vesey that happened to Baka when they got rid of Mariah? When they got rid of Mariah, they win two times straight first place, for crying out loud. And I think Vesey is going to have a little of that happen because Neca has been an anchor for the Vesey tribe. So now that Neca is out of the game, I do believe that Vesey will storm back because they have some very strong players. Okay, they got I forget who they have. These tribe things throw me off, but I do know they have Cody. Okay, they have Cody, they have Dwight, and somebody I'm forgetting about. But between those two individuals by themselves, oh yeah, here you go. They got Cody, Dwight, and Jesse. That's three very strong players in my personal opinion. And Noelle has shown that she can hold her own as well. So it's not a surprise for me. I'll say it right now. Definitely, Baka is going back to Tribal Council, and I believe the issue between Janine, Gabler, and Ellie will rear its ugly head. Okay, the fact that Ellie and Janine are working together, and the fact that now Sammy seems to be upset and wanting to plot against Ellie, and of course, Gabler's on board with that move as well. I think Ellie or Janine go home next, and we have to point out something that's standing out. Why are all the women going home so early? Okay, what is that about? It seems like, what typically happens in these type of games, the boys run the game. And this is why the women needed to stick together. But even some of the women, i.e. Ellie, are a part of the cause for this trend. So, what happens here? What happens from here? Does the fact that Survivor 42's winner being a woman, someone who was ultimately under the radar for the entire game, did that create some negative shockwaves for this season where we have, I want to say 3 women back to back going home in the first 3 episodes? I mean, does that trend continue? Because I think it does. I think in episode 4, it will be Ellie or Janine by way of going through Gabler's bag. I think that will play somewhat of a reason for, again, a 4th woman going home. And Sharon says, I agree with you. Sharon, if you've seen this season or I don't know if you watch Survivor, but that's certainly the trend right now. And the guys are dominating because the women are not sticking together necessarily. Okay, we saw Ellie, the first chance she got, backstab Mariah, right? So yeah, we saw that even with tonight's episode. You saw that Neca and Noelle did not seem to work together. It was really woman versus woman. So does that continue? I think yes. I think it does. I think Ellie and Janine are next on the block because Ellie and Janine went through Gabler's bag, and the rest is history. Okay. However, we have some very strong women in this game, and here are the women who I think still have a great chance to surprise everyone. Number 1, Lindsay. Lindsay is so intimidating as a woman. Is really awesome to see. She carries herself with a very strong demeanor. She seems to be someone who commands respect. So I think Lindsay, and the fact that she's on the Coco tribe, certainly puts her in a rare space where she might not even see Tribal Council a lot. And even if she does, depending on when she does, Ryan will be the first one to go home out of Coco, right? Because the guy is insane. He's like a freaking nature. So I don't think Lindsay would have anything to worry about. I don't think. And then also we have to point out Carla. Carla is playing the overall best game from the female perspective. So I have to say that Carla and Lindsay are the surviving hopes, and they are both on the strongest tribe being Coco, who can change this entire narrative that I'm starting to see. All right, I've already seen 3 women voted out in 3 episodes. That should tell you exactly what's going on with Survivor. And I'm not sure it gets better because I think Baka goes to Tribal Council next, and I think Ellie more so than Janine goes home as well. And there you have it, folks. All right. So that's what I have. I hope you enjoyed that recap. I certainly appreciate you for joining me. If you're watching this after the live stream, still feel free to comment. I'll be checking comments and stuff like that. Thank you for the like in advance. And I will see you all soon next week. And please be safe out there. Thank you for joining me. Peace.